My name is John Levy, and it's my very distinct privilege to serve as the 10th chair of the Legal Services Corporation Board. And on behalf of our LSC board, all of whom are here with us today, I welcome you to this special forum on increasing access to justice. Thank you to our speakers and panelists for joining us, and the State Bar of Georgia for hosting us in this really terrific facility. I also want to thank my predecessor, the 9th chair of the LSC board, Atlanta's own Frank Strickland, former ABA president and LSC Leaders Council member Linda Klein, and Mike Monahan, State Bar of Georgia Pro Bono and Access to Justice Liaison, for their invaluable assistance in bringing us together and helping to get the word out about this forum. We are also grateful for the generous collaboration of the executive directors of our two fabulous grantees here in Georgia, Susan Coppage at Georgia Legal Services Program and Rita Sheffy at Atlanta Legal Aid Society. We'll be privileged today to hear remarks in a few minutes from Georgia Supreme Court Justice Verda Colvin, and later at our reception from former Georgia Governor Roy Barnes. Our program also features two panels. The first brings together some of Georgia's preeminent companies to discuss corporate perspectives on making justice a reality in our communities. LSC's remarkable president, Ron Flagg, will moderate. The second, hosted by LSC's Chief Data Officer, Holly Stevens, examines the impact of medical legal partnerships and features legal aid lawyers and a physician involved in Georgia's MLP projects. Well, we gather today as LSC marks its 50th anniversary year. On July 25 of 1974, Richard Nixon signed the LSC Act to help, and I quote Nixon, provide equal access to the system of justice in our nation and provide high-quality legal assistance to those who would otherwise be unable to afford legal counsel. Of the corporation the LSC Act created, Nixon said, "Here each day, the old, the unemployed, the underprivileged, the largely forgotten people of our nation may seek help." Well, 50 years later, they're still seeking help. And our LSC grantees across the country are providing it. In fact, these 5 decades, our extraordinary network of providers has helped nearly 75 million low-income Americans with their civil legal problems. 75 million. LSC's commemorating our milestone anniversary, as you saw, with an outreach campaign called Protecting the Promise. As a part of this 50th anniversary initiative, we recently commissioned a Harris poll about civil legal issues, and the results should be disturbing to all of us, even if they're hardly surprising. The survey found that more than half of our countrymen, 56%, mistakenly believe that they're entitled to free legal representation if they cannot afford a lawyer for civil matters, and 18% are unsure. Well, when you add them together, that's 3/4 of the population. And that number includes adults under 35 still holding this belief. So how are we educating our next generations about our justice system? And the poll also showed that 59% of people who experienced a civil legal matter within the past 3 years, they didn't seek out legal help from an attorney who could have been pivotal in getting their issues resolved. And that includes 82% of older Americans victims of scams or identity theft, 63% of people contacted by collection agencies or creditors, and 52% of natural disaster survivors. So that study clearly confirms and only deepens the findings of our most recent Justice Gap report from 2022, which revealed that low-income Americans do not receive any or enough legal help for 92% of their civil legal problems. 92%. And during the past decade, LSC's two outstanding grantees here in Georgia and LSC's 128 other grantees with 900 offices stretching across the country have worked so hard to increase state funding. They've expanded the use of kiosks, portals, justice buses. They've trained paraprofessionals. They've helped create easier to use court forms. They're developing ways to utilize the growing power of AI. And LSCs, by the numbers, the data underlying our legal aid programs recently released found, in fact, that LSC grantees are closing more cases, 771,000 cases in 2023, a 10-year high. Across the nation, they served nearly 2 million people. Here in Georgia, there are two grantees, one of them 23,000 cases, the other 55,000, a 19% increase from the previous year. Well, folks, imagine what our grantees here and across the country could do with anything approaching adequate funding if they were not forced to turn away as many eligible applicants as they can help because of a lack of resources. 30 years ago, Congress appropriated $400 million for LSC. So although we appreciate for this fiscal year, Congress maintained LSC's funding at $560 million, well, clearly much more is needed to close this significant justice gap after so many years of inadequate funding. That's why our bipartisan board voted unanimously just a few months ago to request from Congress $2.1 billion for LSC's fiscal year 2026 budget. Well, you can see what such an increase would do for LSC and its grantees. It would make a world of difference. And it would keep faith with the covenant that binds us together as Americans. As Linda Klein so succinctly put it, justice for all is not just a pretty phrase in the Pledge of Allegiance. It is a promise we make to every American. Well, much is at stake here, as Judge Louis Lyman of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York powerfully expressed at an LSC event just last year in New York City. And I quote the judge, "When the largest and most vulnerable segments of our society can no longer access the courts will cease to be instruments of justice to which those who are genuinely injured can turn to for redress. They become mediators only for the wealthy or for the government. The notion of equal justice for all, which is the bedrock for the rule of law, becomes an empty promise." So as we recognize LSC's 50th anniversary and 100 years for Atlanta Legal Aid, we must redouble our commitment and efforts with all of you to make sure that the promise of equal justice in America is not just an empty promise, but it's a fully realized one, a lived reality for all Americans. This crisis in access is happening right now on our watch, and as Judge Lyman put it so aptly, it puts the rule of law at risk. But the good news, it's a solvable crisis. We know how to solve it. With more money, trained paraprofessionals, AI, expanded tech, we can do this. And isn't it our responsibility to solve this crisis right now for future generations of Americans? It's happening on our watch. We've got to take it seriously and get this done now. Thank you very much. Yeah.